All right, looks like we're recording. Good morning. Want to welcome you once again to AMSC. This is our church history class. Good morning, Gloria.
Good morning, Professor.
How you doing?
Fine.
We are going to jump right into it because we got a packed day. So let's open up and talk about your course. Let me go to your course real quick. Somebody, because we're recording, do me a favor and just mute your microphone. I think we
I'm
have a little
sorry.
scratchy background. Okay, there we go. Let me do that again. All right, all right. I see, somebody give me a thumbs up if you can see our screen. It should say Survey of Christian Church, Christian History. Um, all right, thank you, Walter. We are just going to go over a few announcements and we're going to jump right into it. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. This is week 4. So just make sure that you're going down your tab. Week 4 is week of March 28th. And can you believe it? We're going to see April tomorrow, God willing. 4th month of 2022. So we're in module 4. All right, so module 4, you have your week 4 forum. Let's talk about that real quick. Week 4 forum. You're going to talk about Nestorianism. Nestorianism. And how did the Nestorian church form? Use your textbook and your research. How did the Nestorian church form? I see some folks have already answered it. I graded, let me see, I didn't grade yet in Christian history. You'll hear me use the words interchangeably, church or Christian history. I did start grading in the New Testament class. So I'm coming over to your class today to catch up on your grading from last week. So don't worry. All right, so for the week of March 28th, we also have your first quiz. So we're going to talk about chapters 5 and 6. Hopefully we can squeeze 6 in today, but I want to talk about your first quiz. It's open now and it will close on, it will close on April the 3rd. That's Sunday, April the 3rd, 11:59. So I can't open it right now so everybody will see it. But if you haven't taken it yet, it is on chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. You are more than welcome to use your notes from the PowerPoints and from your textbook on chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Also, one more announcement before we get started. April 1st is tomorrow, and midterm grades are going in. Can you believe it? It's like we just got started. So we're like in week 4, which is kind of like our mid break. And midterm grades will go in tomorrow, April 1st. And it just gives you a benchmark of where you are. And if you're missing any assignments, not too much in this class, but if you're missing any assignments, communicate with me, if anything's going on so that you can get caught up on those things. All right, so anyway, week 4, your announcements are make sure that you complete your quiz number 1 and your week 4 forum, okay? And of course, you all are joining me today for class, and those people who cannot join are watching this video. All right. Any questions, comments before we go into our lesson for today? All right, all right, all right. Okay, give me a second. I'm going to pull up our lesson. Let's see, we had anybody join us? All right, we're going to pull up our lesson. Now, I got a double back from last week, y'all, and we didn't finish all of chapter 4 because I know it was a lot. We're going to go back and talk about Constantine. and then we're going to get into chapter 5. So I'm going to apologize if we don't get through all of our lesson in chapter 5 and 6, y'all, but we are going to finish chapter 4. So we'll get you ready for your quiz. All right, I hope you can see this, and we are going to pick back up from last week. It seems like forever. So I met y'all on the on the 24th last week. All right, so remember, we keep talking about conflict, and last week we talked about martyrs. Remember that? And the whole point of martyrdom was that the early church leaders were standing up and they were passionate and they were serious about their faith. A martyr would say, "Hey, I'm gonna go down. I'm going to die for my faith, and that's all right because I'm going to be with the Lord." And so we saw that there were changes in leadership in Rome. That's our key place that I want you to always keep in your mind, where things get started in Rome, the Roman Empire. And let me just pause real quick. Somebody open your microphone. Did the Roman Empire, was it Christian? Was it widely Christian?
No.
Somebody want to tell me, was the Roman Empire at that time, was it widely Christian?
No.
No. What did the Roman Empire do? Were they worshiping other gods or what?
It was a mixed bag. They worshipped other gods like from Apollo and stuff like that, but they also worshiped the emperor. He was considered a god.
Right. So Christianity is new. It's like this new movement, and they are monotheistic. What's monotheistic?
Many
Mm,
gods.
mono.
One God.
One God. Oh, sorry.
One God. That's all
I
right.
got poly and mono mixed up.
Yes, that's all right. There you go.
Oh.
So the Christian church is new, and they're like, look, we are monotheistic, and our students said no, they worship one God, and that was causing a big problem in the Roman Empire because they worship different gods. They worship, a god for this purpose, a god for that purpose, as well as the royalty god. So that was causing a big problem with leadership. Leadership would say, "Hey, yeah, remember we talked last week? I believe it was it Valerian? Valerian was outlawing some of the Christian clergy. He was burning down their churches, their temples, and was just really being, I say, rude and evil to the Christian clergy, the Christian church, and then you would have another person coming in and saying, "Yeah, okay, I'm going to allow them to stay." And so remember, Gallienus, his son, he came in and reversed the father's policy. So just remember, we have a lot of ups and downs. I think we ended last week with Diocletian. And remember, I said we go up and down, and I said here we go again. So we're about in the 4th century, where Diocletian is now ordering all the churches to be torn down, the Bibles to be burned, the clergy to be tortured. And we left off here last week where now people are finding themselves moving out of Rome. So they got to move out of Rome in order to save their lives. They're moving into North Africa. And so this persecution of killing them and hurting them, tearing down churches, lasted until about 312-ish. And then this forced people to move away. And this is also where we find writings. They're forced to give up their writings. They were trying to destroy writings. And I think this kind of ties into the New Testament course, where we are not able to find like I have paper, we got paper all around, right? They were not able to find a lot of New Testament writings intact because a lot of them had, and I say original writings, because a lot of them had been destroyed. All right, now let's come to Constantine. This is supposed to be a statue of Constantine. We're going to talk about Constantine, and he was a little bit more level-headed. So remember, it's almost like a roller coaster with this early church. They have a high time, then they go down. Then they have a high time, then somebody beats them down. Good and bad. It just keeps going up and down like that. Anybody heard of Constantinople? That's named after Constantine. And Constantinople is what we call now our modern day Turkey. I've never been to Turkey, but I hear it is beautiful. Has anybody been there? No, but I've heard it is so beautiful.
I have.
I have.
Oh, beautiful. I can't see you. Who said I have?
It's Carolyn.
In
I have.
Troy.
Yes.
Yes, I lived there for 3 years.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on here.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Carolyn
Uh-huh.
lived there, and somebody else said they have been there. And I'm sorry, I can't see you when I share the screen.
Right. I don't have a camera.
Troy.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just pause real quick. So Troy and Carolyn, I want to come to you first.
Mhm.
And you live there. Can you tell me anything about the, and we're going to talk more about Constantine, and then I'm going to come to you, Troy. Tell me anything about the churches there or the religious buildings.
The one thing is in Istanbul, when you see the Blue Mosque, Istanbul has more of your, what I would say, temples and so forth of that. I lived in what is called Izmir, Turkey, which is NATO headquarters. But one of the things that you find is that they do practice all of their religious dates. They carry on with it. I saw the slaughter of a sheep during one of their Bayrams. My neighbor next door in the apartment from me, they observe their Bayram. They do the sacrificial lamb. They adhere to all of those religious dates. It was interesting, and it was a peaceful, at that particular time, was very peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
They're religious, but they're peaceful.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Carolyn.
Okay.
And Troy, can I come to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, right. This is awesome. Tell me a little bit about your time there. Talk about the can you tell me about the buildings or any religious or
But one major, well, there's a lot, but the Hagia Sophia, the first Christian church.
First Christian church?
I mean, beautiful place, but now it's been turned into a mosque. I know she knows that.
Wow.
Because Islam is very, very present there now.
Now.
But a very beautiful building. We did a pilgrimage, like we went to Asia Minor, East Turkey to Asia Minor. We followed the course of the 7 churches.
Beautiful.
So it was very enlightening.
So thank you, Troy and Carolyn. It's like the Christian history book comes alive when when you share that.
Yes.
So let's go back. Thank you so
Well, one
much.
more thing that when you look
You're
at
good.
it, one more thing is that we said Constantinople. It is now Izmir. Not Izmir,
Damn.
Istanbul. I'm sorry, Istanbul.
Istanbul.
Right, because we still say it, but when you're in the country itself, from day to day, it's really Istanbul.
Istanbul. Gotcha.
And also where they had the first Nicene Council, we were able to visit that place.
Really? Okay, and we're gonna talk about that today. Awesome. So Troy, it's like when you read, and Carolyn and class, when you read, this is good because you can put the connection with the places. And that's
Right.
something because it's like, okay, wow, I've been there. So you see how it's coming into a full picture.
True, true,
This is
very true.
wonderful. Thank you, students, for sharing that. Um,
May I ask a question, please?
yes,
Mhm.
is this Gloria?
Carolyn or Troy, I heard that Turkey was very modern, but that the Muslims and the Christians get along very well together. There's not a lot of discord. Did you find that to be true?
I
Yeah,
found it
I
to be
didn't.
true. I did.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
lived, my thing was, at the time I was married, my husband was stationed at NATO headquarters. So I lived in the city of, and I walked the streets. Everybody, it didn't matter what faith you were because they accepted it all. Now,
Wow.
in Europe with the military, you're either Catholic or Protestant.
Yeah.
You worship that. You're Catholic or you go to Protestant worship or you go to the Catholic mass. But for those of us who lived there in that town, we all got along. It didn't matter. We didn't, for their practices of their religion, it's open, it's not closed. You know,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you want to hide, your faith.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. They don't. And
Right.
I've never, well, I used to call was worry beads. They were beads that look like the rosary.
Mm-hmm.
They would carry that in their hands, some in regard to the situations they would go through. And it was called the worry beads. But then there are those who did not, but they believed in their faith so strongly. Uh, they believe in the family so strongly. It was interesting. It was really peaceful. I cried when I left, though.
Oh, wow.
It was really, I didn't find any
So,
prejudice. I
wow.
didn't find any, in fact, I was asked several times if I was really an American, African American, or if I was Turkish. And
Wow.
I kept saying, I'm an American, I'm African American. And they
Wow.
telling me no, no, no. But I said, yes, I am. But it was
Awesome.
all inclusive. Yes.
That's awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Yeah.
Carolyn.
You're welcome.
Troy, did I hear you? I can't see.
But I agree with everything she said. There wasn't any conflict there.
Oh, okay, okay. Sometimes I can't
Yes.
I can't see you guys. I thought I heard you. Very good, thank you. This is like the history book coming to life. So with Constantine, as we see here on the screen, when he comes into power, now he begins to tolerate the church people a little bit more. And I use that word tolerate. Okay, so not necessarily fully embracing, but he is beginning to tolerate them more than previous leadership. If you take a look, we won't be able to get into all of it, but one of the key things that Constantine is known for is his building projects. And he allowed, now remember, I believe it was under Valerian, he destroyed he destroyed a lot of the Christian churches. Okay, so now Constantine is more in the rebuilding stage, building stage, and so he's into a lot of construction. If you take a look in your book on page 34, there's a list of some of the building projects that came up under his leadership, under his rule. But one of the things that I do want to bring out for you is I didn't know this until I was in seminary and I was studying this. In many of our Christian churches, we have a pulpit, right? And in the pulpit, okay, the Constantine was responsible for kind of like the modern day setup of a church. Okay, so we have the people are out front, right? And then the people look at the pulpit where the pastor is, or, you know, you may have a choir loft or something like that behind the pastor, depending on how your church is set up. The key thing that I want you to hone in on is the pulpit the same level as the seats where the people sit, where the congregation sits? That's what I want to say. Is it the same level at your church?
Can you say that one more time?
Okay, and I might not have been clear. In your observations, or maybe in your church, I want you to remember where the pulpit is. Is it the same level as
The congregation,
the congregation seating?
No.
no.
No,
Oh, very good.
elevated.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's elevated. It's elevated. Who came up with that? Constantine.
Okay.
And that was one of the ways that Constantine distinguished. There are usually 3 steps. Now, it could be a different setup at your church, but there are usually about 3 or 4 steps. At my church, I think it's 3 steps. I need to count the next time, right? But usually there are 3 steps that elevate the pulpit from the congregation. So anyway, the raising of the front part of the church, which we would call now in our vernacular the pulpit, that raised part was Constantine's, came up under Constantine's building project. And so churches after that began to take that same, what's the word, architecture or style, as they created their churches centuries and centuries after that. All right, now let's talk, how we doing? Let's talk about, here we go again, we have differences of opinion, differences of opinions. Now, we find ourselves still in the early church, and they're trying to put down, this is what we believe. They're trying to say, this is how it should be. And of course, you're going to have people, because we're human, that are going to say, no, I don't believe that. That's wrong. So I want you to see the gray and the green and the blue rectangle that's on the screen here. So we have a couple of different branches that are going to start bubbling out. Arianism. Arianism. So as they start to progress in their thinking, everybody's not going to think the same way. And we still see it today, even in Christianity. Arianism said, Christ isn't God, okay? Arianism said, Christ is not God. But now, the Apostles' Creed was developed to refute the Arianism thought. And so I'm going to show you that example in just a second after we get off of this page. So I want you to know what Arianism is. And so that was the thought that they said, that, there were some believers that said, well, Christ is not God. Okay. And so when you have these differences of opinion, what do you think is happening to the church at the time? Somebody over here say Christ isn't God. Somebody over here, and we're over here say, yeah, he is. So what do you think is happening to the church now?
There's a division coming in there.
Their divisions, their arguments, as well as I'll give you this discussion, like, okay, y'all, what we gonna believe? Remember what we said? Let's go back and look at this again. All right, we're gonna come back to Arianism. Donatism argued that Christian clergy must be faultless for their ministry to be effective and their prayers and their sacraments to be valid. Can we just pause right there on that one? On the green tab, Donatism. What do you think about that one?
I feel that because of the fact that the Christian clergies were human, there were mistakes they made as well.
Sure did.
I have this human meaning many things. You can divide it in many ways, but they had emotions, they had desires, they had the wanting to know as well as being wanting to to lead. They want to know how to lead, and I feel that sometimes with that much power, that much influence come power. That's what I want to say.
The influence.
They and you need to focus on, as humans, they are giving themselves, I think that they're giving themselves to the knowledge and experience, but yet and still it's also power. And how should they use that? Being human.
Good point, Ms.
Yeah.
Carolyn. As we start to go into, as we start to move centuries and centuries, right, into our church history book, we're going to see the issue of how can I say it? An abuse of power. So we are going to see, unfortunately, as we start moving into developing this thing called Christianity, there are going to be some church leaders that do abuse their power. So Donatism argued that, yeah, the Christian clergy, the leaders have to be faultless. When I read that, I said, "Oh my goodness, well, I might not be able to serve because I'm not faultless."
Mm-hmm.
We've all sinned and fallen short, as the word says. But they said in order for their ministry to be effective and their prayers and sacraments to be valid. I do want to bring this up real quick in green, and if anybody else wants to share, jump in after me. Perhaps Donatism came to be because of some, I'm gonna say, foolishness. Maybe there was some foolishness going on in the church, and maybe Donatism came to be because it's like, look, y'all, you can't keep doing X, Y, and Z. And hurting the people, or maybe they were living really sinful lives. But to say faultless really bounced back, and that began to push against this thought that they, had to be like sinless. That was really reaching. Anybody want to jump in there?
I think that in Donatism, you see remnants of that in denominations, that they believe that the pastor, being the leader, he must be blameless, faultless,
Sure.
without sin. You see that in some churches.
Oh yes. Oh yes. 100.
Because then you have some places where if a pastor, goes off the rails, so to speak, they take him down. He has to come down for a while,
Sure. That's right.
I just wanted to add one of the things that it does say, I mean, it indicates, it doesn't say it, but I think it indicates the true nature of the person. You may not know who you are, you may say who you serve, but the inner man, that spirit within, comes out. And if you've been given the title and you've been given that honor,
Sure.
even though you cover it, the trueness of who you are and who you serve and how you take it comes out. I don't know. I just feel that the human nature of man is going to come out regardless of what you do, what title you own or serve, the true nature of the individual. And we see it so many times now.
So many times.
And we may say we believe, that's the word. That's coming from your mouth, but let's see it from the inside. Let's see your spirit, and it's something else.
Good. And right, this is not a new thing, right? It just continues to evolve itself. Let me get right here, and then we're going to examine the Apostles' Creed in our activity today. So you will see that the church fathers over time, I think it was Troy brought up the Nicene Creed, but you will see that church fathers keep having these meetings, right? They keep having a meeting, or they would call them councils, right? And they would keep having these meetings over and over and over again to discuss what they believe. We don't see it much anymore. Let's say nobody's having a council in 2022 because we have the Bible and we have, we have our learnings at our different churches and things like that. We're more sophisticated in what we have in front of us as research. But these councils kept coming to be because they were trying to say, well, look, this group over here says this, and we thought it was like this. And so this is the reason why you hear of councils. Let me go to, on the top page, excuse me, on the top of the screen, we talked about Arianism, right? And Arianism, Arianism said, somebody tell me, you remember what Arianism said?
Christ was
Ari-
not God.
Yeah.
Christ was not God. Okay. And I'm going to pull up, I'm having some issues with my screen here. There we go. And now remember, when somebody says something, I'm sorry, I'm having some issues with my computer screen, and they don't believe in it. Remember, we get a council, and then the council comes together and says, this is what we believe. So there are a lot of creeds that have come out of these councils: Nicene Creed, Apostles' Creed, and the whole point is, I'm Methodist. I'm a part of a Methodist church, and we recite the Apostles' Creed. I know I may have a few others here as well. We recite the Apostles' Creed, and so there may be other creeds that you may use within your church body as well. So what was the whole point of this? The whole point of the Apostles' Creed, like Nicene Creed, they were birthed out of, we're going to write down what we believe, because this other group, because this other group is saying something else. And so these councils came together. Let me see if I can get it up here. These councils came together and put together on paper or stone or whatever it is, papyrus, what they believed, and that passed down. And so I just, let's go right here. I hope you can see it pretty good on the screen. I can make it a little bit bigger. So this is just an example of a creed. This is the Apostles' Creed. And I pulled it up from the United Methodist Church, but it is also recited in, I'm African Methodist Episcopal Zion, or you may hear it in CME,
AME.
AME. I think we have some
AME.
There you go. As well. Very good. And this one says, let's go to the first 4 lines. I may not get all of it. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. So let's just pause right there. So the creed, the whole point is refuting what somebody else was saying. They're refuting somebody else's teaching. And in Jesus Christ, his only son, our Lord. All right. So they want them to know that, look at here, you said this, but this is what we believe. And we're going to make sure that as we pass it down orally, and it's also in our teaching, because remember, the Arianism said that no, Jesus wasn't God. And so they're going to make sure in the creed that they say exactly what it is that they believe that Jesus is, or who Jesus is. Okay. All right. And I'm going to transition a little bit here. Y'all okay? All right. And I'm going to come back to monks. We're going to talk about monks, and then we're going to finish up chapter 4. I wanted to finish chapter 4 so you'd be ready for the quiz. Okay, I'm coming back to you. Y'all ever heard of a monk? What's a monk? I'm not sure. I'm not well. With monks, I'm not sure. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Um, if that would really work in our society today. So monks started in very early Christian church, and they lived a really simple life. Many of them found themselves like living out in the desert. They weren't going to live in like the city or anything like that. But their whole life was dedicated to prayer. They were going to be real simple. They were dedicated to charity to other people. They would be, kind of like what we would call maybe like missions or missionary, but they stayed off to themselves. And later on, you will also see like these monks in Europe begin to form monasteries. Okay. So just a few examples of monks are Basil the Great. He was a monk in Syria and in Egypt, and Martin of Tours. Okay, so monks, and we'll talk later on as we start moving into the church in Europe as we talk about nuns, but that goes like more into the Catholic Church. But monks were just really simple. They might wear the same outfit, we'll see later as we start talking about the European Christian church. They wore really simple outfits. It was just like a long drab, almost looked like a robe. But the whole point was, I'm not dressing to be seen. I'm not dressing to be stylish, because my life is not to be stylish. My life is dedicated to prayer. And I just think, and I'm sure to be a monk, there has to be a calling on one's life. All right. So we're going to, before we get to Jerome, any questions, comments on monks? Okay. All right. And in our world today in 2022, I think it would be hard for folks to be a monk. We have so many things pulling us away. All right, let's talk about, as we finish up chapter 4, we're going to talk about a biblical scholar that's really important. If you don't remember anybody from the early church in terms of scholar and research, y'all, I want you to remember Jerome. And I love his name. I said Jerome probably was one of our cousins. So Jerome was a biblical scholar. And we're thankful for Jerome for a few things. Jerome wanted the church to follow the Hebrew Bible and not use the Apocrypha. Now, let me just pause right there. Anybody know what the Apocrypha is? Let's see if I have my Bible up here. I got the wrong one. Okay, so the Apocrypha are extra writings that didn't make it into the official Bible that we know today. I'm going to see if I can show you some examples. I'm looking at my bookshelf to see if I have my Bible with an Apocrypha, but I don't. In our regular Bibles, so we have our Old Testament, right? And we have our New Testament, and we have those books that made it in, okay, those 66 books. But there were other books that were written, other biblical books that were written that just didn't make its way into our official canon or our official Bible. And those are called the Apocrypha. As we transition, I'm gonna see if I can find some for you. I can show you on the screen. So Jerome kind of helped with getting the Bible together as we see it today. And he was like, I'm not sure what his reasoning was on why he didn't want it to be used. But as we see today, they probably took his suggestion. Here is one of the key things. If you look at point 4, and we're thankful for Jerome, because now Jerome starts to help other people that speak different languages understand the Bible. And Jerome translated the Bible into Latin. Okay, and so we had, remember y'all, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, The New Testament was largely written in Greek. And so Jerome said, I'm gonna translate this so that other people can understand. So we have other languages on the earth, right? And he translated it into Latin, and it's called the Latin Vulgate. Sometimes you may see LV in your Bible, it may see LV, and that means the Latin Vulgate. So we're so thankful for Jerome, because now we start to get on this train of translating the Bible. So we'll see it go to Latin, and we'll see it later on go to the 1600s, go to English under King James, what we're familiar with. We're thankful it got into English, right? Let me just pause right here and come back to you. Any questions?
Professor Barry, what does the Apocrypha, does it include, I think I've heard of the book of Esther or Mary Magdalene or things like that?
Right. Let me see if I can pull one up, Gloria. I'm glad you brought that up about I can never spell that right. There we go, Apocrypha. Let me see if I can get it up here. And sometimes you can find a Bible that includes, if you may have a Bible that includes the Apocrypha. Let's see if I can get this on the screen, Gloria. And if you do a Google search, sorry, that's not the right one.
My online version of the Bible has some one that I use with written. It has, say, one of them is Tobit.
That's right.
That's what you're looking for? Like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
What did you say, Walter? I'm sorry.
I have a online version of the Revised Standard version of the Bible, and it did include some of these books of the Apocrypha.
Okay.
And one of them, that's one I was just looking at now to make sure it's that, and it's Tobit, but there are about and maybe 10 other books here that I have.
Oh.
That's correct. I want to say it's about 14 books that didn't make its way into the Bible. And so it's almost like packing. You ever pack for a trip and you got all these clothes and you're like, I can bring this and this and this and this. Now I'm the one who overpack. And then maybe they say, look, we can't take all of these hundreds and something of books. We got to shorten it down. And so that's what happened. Some books got eliminated. But anyway, if you see right up here, I would encourage you to see if you can get a copy of the Apocrypha or get a Bible with the Apocrypha in it, because it's nothing wrong with the books. They just didn't make its way into the canon. But yes, as Walter said, there's one called Tobit. There are some books, and here's another one. There are some books about women. We believe that some of the books may have been written by women. We are not really sure. Judith is one. There's some additional writings to, I believe, Daniel and Esther. You have 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Maccabees that really highlight a lot of Jewish ancestry stories. There's the Prayer of Manasseh. So there's a lot of interesting reading there, and will give you a lot of history as well. Okay, it's good. Sometimes also you can do a search and you may be able to, let me hit stop share. You may be able to just simply read them right online. Everything's online now. Y'all doing all right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, let me transition. And I'm coming right back to you. Now, I know we're short on time and we are not going to get all through chapter 5, but I did want to get you through chapter 4. So what I'm going to do, I'm coming back to you. I want to start this conversation, but we're going to finish our conversation next week because I'm looking at the clock already. All right, so what I want to do is we're just going to start our conversation about the church splitting. And so I'm going to move into chapter 5, but we are not going to finish, okay? All right, so we finished up on chapter 4, and we talked about the church is really maturing. Okay, so the early church is really maturing. They're documenting what they believe. They are having discussions. They're having these councils. They are establishing what leadership looks like and what it shouldn't look like. But now we're starting to have, I think we mentioned this earlier, we're really starting to have a division. And now you will start to hear the East and the West. Now you're going to notice that there are two churches forming. Remember, we talked about Arianism, we talked about Donatism, and really all of the isms, a lot of schisms, a lot of divisions and conflicts have now divided the Roman Empire. And so around 395 or so, we're moving kind of like towards 400s. Now we have this division of the East and the West, Western Church. And so the East ruled from what we would kind of say Constantinople, kind of Turkey area. And we'll see that. And so the Eastern Empire really becomes more stable than the West. Okay, so now if you don't remember anything, just simply remember all of this was starting in Rome, but Rome is having issues and we're having conflicts with the way that we're thinking or the way that they were thinking about Christianity. And now we're having conflicts and they said, well, you know what, y'all go over there and believe your thing over there, and we're going to stay over here. And you see this, this separation or division of the church. Okay, this is where we're going to pause right here. And we're going to talk about views of Mary, Mother Mary. Mother Mary. Views of Mary. So the early church is trying to figure out who all these key players are. How do we believe who they are? Who is Jesus? Who is Jesus's mother? You know, they're trying to really put theology to some things. And some people saw Mary as a bearer of God. Okay, and this means to them that as she bore forth God in flesh, this means that meant to them that the Mother Mary carried Jesus Christ, who was God and divine. Other people saw Mary as a bearer of man, more human. Okay, so catch the two differences. Nestorius, in which we kind of get into the issue of Nestorianism. Nestorius pushed this belief that Mary carried Jesus, who was a human, but not necessarily divine. And so we're not necessarily going to get into, oh, so-and-so right, wrong, because we're going to be here all day. But I want you to see the two views that are coming into the early church. And this is going to cause a problem because some are saying, well, that doesn't line up with what we were taught. And then they're saying, no, I can't get with that. I'm going to have to get out of here and go on this side. And then Nestorius, which we see Nestorianism, is in direct conflict of Mary as bearer of God. And so Nestorianism is going to see is going to see Jesus as more of human Remember, look at the second line, that Mary carried Jesus, who was human and not necessarily divine. So these two views had separated or caused even more conflict. Can you imagine in the early church? Okay. So they're like, whoa, wait a minute, you're doing too much. And so, so that's why we start to see an even bigger, what's the word, gulf between the East and the West. Okay. And throughout time, I'm going to pause right here. Throughout time, century after century, this is not going to be the only one that's going to blow your mind. You're going to see different sects, different groups are going to say, well, we believe this, and we said Jesus was this, and they said that God was this. And as they got into trying to figure out what is the Trinity and things like that, so we'll talk more about that in chapters to come. But basically, in a nutshell, as the church is developing, they're developing their thinking, they're developing their theology, and everybody didn't feel the same way. They didn't feel the same way. And so also too, before we leave out, what they would do is, okay, well, you said this, they would back it up with scripture. They say, well, wait a minute, you said that Mary was this, this, and this. Well, our scripture says this, this, and this. Okay. So they would have to back it up with scripture and say, well, wait a minute, this isn't what the word said. Okay. So you can imagine that caused some angry folks to probably head on out of town and, and get with a group of, and that's what we do, right? You get with a group of believers, say, well, you know, I don't know about them over there. I'm gonna get with this group over here that believes what I'm believing. And we do the same thing today. Yeah. Any questions, comments?
Professor Barry.
Yes.
Good morning, class.
Good morning.
I am, what word can I use? Mesmerized, I guess I could say. It's very interesting to see how Jesus left the church in the apostles' hands. And in Acts, the 2nd chapter, speaks about they continue steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine. It's very interesting to see how all these different faiths split off and went away from the foundation that was laid by the apostles. Right. I just thought that it's so interesting. And I guess what I'm saying, maybe because people start thinking that the book of the Lord, the word of God is something logical instead of spiritual. Maybe all this schism and differences of opinion kind of polluted the original plan. Right. But he left the church in the apostles' hands, and it was considered the apostles' doctrine. But everything short of that, really, I guess it's not really what was laid, the foundation. It built from the foundation. That's my opinion.
Well, that's very good, and you're right, Mr. Duhart. You brought there was something I forgot to bring up to y'all, and I'm gonna pull it up right now as you said that about the disciples teaching us things. Okay, and Jesus left this in their hands.
Correct, yes.
Okay, and so also Mr. Duhart brought up a point. Remember, y'all, we said, where did the early church start? What's our key location?
In Greece.
Rome. You're right. Mm-hmm. You're right, Greg. Now remember, even though they are playing out generation after generation after generation after generation what they have been taught, they also have who are they living in conflict with?
Rome,
the Roman government. Mm-hmm. So remember, all of us on this line, you can remember what your mama taught you something, your daddy taught you something, your grandma taught you that the same thing. Great grandma said the same thing. It had been passed down generation after generation after generation, right? But even though as we're living in these days, 2022, and so we know right from wrong, but we are fighting against this society that we're living in. And I can just imagine how they had probably been influenced, Mr. Duhart, by their counterparts that lived around them, by the government. They thought some people, I'm gonna come to you, Gloria, said, yeah, I got it down. This is what they said. This is what we believe. And somebody else said, Go to first and Second Corinthians. A lot of the epistles that you read, Paul has to keep getting on them time after time. Now, I done told y'all this is what you're supposed to be doing. Now, why are you gonna let somebody come from the outside and teach you something different? Letter after letter, he had to keep getting on them.
Yeah.
Kept getting on them, right? And that was even, so Paul's writing was even before this time frame which we're focusing on now. So even Paul had that issue, like, y'all, I done told you, I done told you firsthand what I've been taught, right? And they still, some of them still wasn't learning. Good point. Good point. Gloria, I saw your hand, and I'm gonna pull up this document while you're talking.
Okay, I was going to bring up 2 points, but one maybe you have to, I have to wait for a little while, like up, a few weeks up.
Mm-hmm.
It says that they were to continue in the apostles' doctrine, but and the church universal was laid out for Peter's foundation, right? But very quickly, none of them were apostles. I mean, they weren't with Christ or walked with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so how much of it really was the apostles' doctrine? Because we have all these other people who come in, and I don't know if I'm saying it right, but that's based what I see. And then the new church, I guess it's the East and the West. One had been established for hundreds of years. Rome came to the party late. And so that may be why there was always some confusion in Rome.
Right, but remember also Rome and the culture there is polytheistic.
Right.
And so they've got a lot of what's the best word? A multiplicity of ideas of
Definitely.
the religion.
Yes.
Okay. Good job, scholars. I wanted to, Mr. Duhart brought up the point that the early church had been left in the hands of the disciples. And I forgot, I was sitting at home one day and I said, oh Lord, I forgot to lift this up. And this was back in, I want to say week 2 or week 1. No, week 2. This is in the week 2. It was the spring break week I put it in. But anyway, I wanted to just show you this document. I am not going to read it. You guys can read it for yourself. But the Didache, this is called the Didache. Okay, and this was, they put, you can read this later in your own time, but they put the teaching of the 12 disciples into a almost like a manual. Okay, and you can read this later, you could print it out, save it to your computer. That's what I would say to you. All right, and so this is a document. Of course, it's been typed over. It wasn't looking pretty like this, but they wrote down their own teaching. So their manual of what you should do and how you should do it, how the way of life. So there are a couple different parts. I'm not going to read it all for y'all. Y'all can read this later. How to live with people, Oh Lord, we could talk about this today. Learn to be meek. Do not parade your own merits. We saw that Sunday. Um, the way of death. Okay, here's a good one, y'all. They had a church manual. That's what I wanted to give for y'all. They had a church manual. This is the teachings of the apostles. Isn't that awesome? They told how to do a baptism, how to fast and pray,
Wow.
how to do the Eucharist or communion, what we call it today.
Yes, it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So you all can take a look at that. This is found in week 2.
Okay.
Week 2, they talked about worship, what to do on the day of worship, how to assemble, break bread, offer the Eucharist or communion, and it's awesome. It's just really an awesome piece. The Didache is what it is called. Let me go back to the top. Didache.
Never heard of it.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And remember, this was the teaching. This was they put it down. They said, look, we got to leave them something, but this is the teaching of the 12.
This is the foundation that that others used to do doctrine or whatever, to write down doctrine. This is
Professor Berry.
And you see that I'm coming right to you, and you'll see that the ways that churches operate pull from the Didache. Okay, I heard somebody.
Miss Bean, Sharon.
Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to also share, this was also around the time of the establishment of Christianity, that second period when they were really trying to get out, the edicts were done, creeds were written, writings were written. Everybody was looking for some type of guideline, rules, rubrics to establish Christianity and how it should look and how it should be judged and merited. Am I correct? This was around that time?
Now the Didache would come, but even before the edicts.
So it came before the edicts.
This would be around, now remember, this was the apostles, so this would be more so like around the 2nd century.
So this is around the early church?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So if this was around the early church, why did they feel like they needed to rewrite it when the Roman Catholic Church came?
Once again, just simply humans and saying, right, and one group over here is going to say this, and one group over here is going to believe that. And also, here's the thing too: you can write it down, but it doesn't mean that somebody's going to follow it.
Okay.
Right. And it's a shame. It's a shame. Even now, we got a full Bible, but people will interpret something totally different or not read it at all.
I think they gave Rome had the power. Rome had they stopped the persecution, because before that Christians were at the whim of the emperor. Whoever came up. One would leave alone, another one come burning churches and things like that. Right. So Rome had the power. And right. So who has the power gets the major say.
And remember with the Didache, very good, Gloria. Remember with Didache, the original word, what Didache means is teaching. So the original word means teaching. But remember, y'all, it is not, even though this was documented, keep remembering, y'all, we're in 2022. We can go on Google, we can get whatever we want. And you could go right now and get the Didache and print it out and give it to 15 people in less than 5 minutes. They couldn't find a library for this. hey, did y'all hear about the dedication? They may have heard orally about the teachings, but they couldn't go and
Well,
look. I can
but
go to
look
my
at
library
us.
and pick up something.
We haven't heard, well, I haven't. Many of us haven't heard, and with all the writings and things that we read and seek out, I hadn't heard of it.
Mhm.
I have
There you go. Y'all go to module 2 and download it and save it to your computer. You pass it on to some friends and say, hey, look, especially those in ministry, and you can say, look, the things that we're doing, isn't this awesome? This is what the apostles told us. You know, baptism, we're still practicing baptisms, right? Communion, we're still practicing that. And the way that they said to do it, you can read all that to yourself a little bit later. Okay. All right. All right, good session, everybody. I held you a little bit late. It's 12:09, but this was good and fruitful.
I have a question, Professor Berry. With
Yes.
our quiz, I know it's open book and open notes. Do we have more than one attempt, or is it timed?
It is, I believe it's about 2 hours.
Okay,
Yes. Good question.
thank you.
All right, good people. It's always a pleasure to see you. Good questions from you as well. If nothing else, I will see you when I'm going to see you. Lord, this year is gone. April 7th, Thursday at 11, okay? All right. Okay, y'all take care and have a blessed day.
You do that.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.